Hi, I'm Emily Yee, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I specialize in working with really intense teenagers and their families. And today we're going to be talking about journaling, which is something that is really near to my heart. I've done it my whole life as an intense teenager. It's definitely been something that was self-taught and needed it in order to process my feelings. We're going to be talking about it today in the same category as cognitive behavioral therapy. So we've been talking about cognitive behavioral therapy, which is the most studied, proven intervention for anxiety and depression for teenagers, and how journaling comes alongside this approach in order to help with anxiety and depression. And so if you are a teenager who has thoughts like, nobody likes me, I'm not good enough, I don't know why I feel like this, my feelings are overwhelming, then this video is for you. We're going to talk about how journaling can be helpful and how to use it as a thought log in order to notice and be mindful about the thoughts that you're having, if they're automatic thoughts or if they're on purpose, and how to challenge thoughts that maybe aren't very helpful. So let's dive in. Little choices and action add color back into your life. So writing is very helpful for your brain because when you put the words on paper and you're able to see them, now they're no longer a part of you, but they're separate. And you're looking at it from a distance and you can organize it, you can spot problems, you can see patterns. And so this separation from what's going on inside of your head is very important for some kids because they just feel like they're in their head and it's a ping pong ball going back and forth and they can't make sense of it. And when we get it out onto paper, then we're able to organize it and process it and make more sense of it. Another reason why it's helpful is because your brain really loves patterns. It just wants to go from point A to point B, point A to point B, point A to point B. So if it's saying to you, nobody likes you, you're not good enough, repeat, repeat, repeat. Writing is a way to interrupt that pattern and to really see if it's helpful and if it's taking you in the direction that you want to go. And cognitive behavioral therapy is all about the idea that we can train our brain to think in a way that's more helpful for us. And I don't mean that in a very drastic way, like, oh, if you're living in a traumatic situation, you can just train your brain to deal with it. I don't believe that at all. But if we are, like we often are, in a healthy situation, but our brain is just running rampant and we have no control over it and no really mindfulness to notice what we're thinking about and to try to point it in the right direction, then it will kind of take us in the wrong direction because it's looking for problems. It's looking for things to solve, especially if you're a very intelligent, very intense person. It's constantly like a little radar, like beep, 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 beep. Where are the problems? And that's what I want to think about all the time. And that's maybe not helpful for you. So using a journal to record what the thoughts are, get some distance from it, potentially break up the pattern that's happening over and over again can be really helpful. Writing also activates the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain that's very logical. Bringing in where you have to write out with letters and with words the emotions that you're feeling inside of you is a process where we're shifting into a different part of our brain. And that's part of when we were talking about getting that distance onto the paper and being able to make sense of it. You're moving into a different part of your brain where you're actually rationally thinking about the feelings. And so I don't know if you know somebody or if you were that person that just goes through life not paying attention, not naming what you're feeling, but just pushing through, kind of ignoring it, shoving it down. And then it comes up later in a really weird or, unnecessary out-of-pocket way. Writing would definitely be a way to pause and deal with each feeling as it comes up so that you're not stuck in a situation where you're overreacting because you didn't process emotions from earlier. And so I encourage everyone to use this tool, and we're going to talk a little bit more about why it's helpful. So cognitive behavioral therapy uses a tool called a thought log. And when I'm introducing this in therapy, I'll often call it the ABCs. So I'll write ABC, activating event, belief, consequence. And then I'll add another C in there, which is challenge. So the activating event might be like, I was in a car accident. And the belief is, I had no control over it. It happened to me. And the consequence is I'm a little bit afraid to get into the car now. I'm a little anxious about car rides. And then the challenge would be I survived that car accident. I can do what I can control, and I can't control what I can't control. I can choose where I drive and maybe limit that, but there's a lot of things I can't control. So you start to really form a thought that's more full than just the one that you came with out of the initial activation. What's interesting about these thought logs is somebody else could have been in a car accident, and their belief is that was so random. And then their consequence of that thought is that'll probably never happen again. I have nothing to be afraid of. And so depending on what life experience you have, how your brain works, what you've been through in the past, your belief column is going to be different, even if you and a friend experience the same exact activating event. And this can be a helpful tool to see how other people think differently, even if the same thing happened to them. But this is the tool that we would provide in therapy to say, please fill out this form several times this week so that we can start to get a feel for what has been going on. We've got this connection between the activating event, the thought, and the feeling. And that's the triangle that makes up cognitive behavioral therapy. How does the behavior, this thing that you experience, affect you, and what automatic thought comes to mind, and then what feeling does that thought invoke in you? And then that leaves us ready to then challenge that thought to begin with. Was it true? Was it helpful? Does it, in terms of helpful, does it help us feel the way that we want to feel? And does it help us be the person that we want to be? And so writing it down and taking the time to slow down is a big part of this treatment and why it's so helpful. Remembering, again, the point is to reduce our anxiety and depression. And so the reason we're coming to this tool is because what we're doing isn't working. Just pushing through, just ignoring it, leaving it alone, hoping that time will heal it, hasn't been a solution. So maybe instead of pushing it away and stuffing it down, like, let's bring it to the surface. Let's take a moment to notice what's happening here, and let's see if there's anything that we can do to shift it. So it doesn't always have to be getting out your journal and writing down with your cup of coffee and a comfy couch and birds singing outside, which is my favorite. But if you aren't into that, and I also have ADHD, so I get not wanting to always do that. A lot of times I'm on my walk and I'll use a voice memo thing and it'll dictate into the notes in my phone. And then I can look at it later and kind of edit it and make sense of it. Or even just talking it out and putting it into a voice memo to send to a friend helps me to get words around my thoughts, and verbalizing it is helpful. Another way that it can be helpful with ADHD is using colors. So you write it all out and then you get different color highlighters, and you're like, this was a helpful thought, or this made me feel good. These are depressing thoughts, and you highlight what the different feelings are based on the thoughts that you're journaling down. Maybe you do more of an art journal than words. You're expressing your emotions in ways that are more abstract, or you're doing kind of a graphic novel situation of how you're feeling. These are all great ways that lead us to the same path, which is, can we get some distance? Can we create some language around just the abstract thoughts that are in our brain? Can we get them out of us and onto paper or into our phones as a way to get some distance and get some perspective? So for parents of teens that are wanting to journal or just process their thoughts in a different way, I want to encourage you that this is the time to create a space for them to think out loud. We've all been the teenager that doesn't want to write it down because they don't want to get caught. They don't want somebody to find it and then be in trouble or be thought less of. But teenagers are trying to make sense of their thoughts and themselves, and not everything that they think or that they write down is a heart issue, of they don't really believe it all either. They're working through it. They haven't fully challenged the thought yet when it's coming out for the first time. And even if you're just having conversations with your teen and they're not journaling, giving them that space of, that's an interesting thought. Can you say more about that? I'm curious about what you think about that. And they share something, there might be another perspective coming right after that because they can think about it in more than one way and they're really trying to verbalize their full thought and figure out what they think about it. And so I just want to encourage you to hold space. A lot of times therapy is that space holder of, hey, there's no judgment in here, and you can kind of talk through some different thoughts that you're having without me attributing any of those to you. None of them are your signed, deal, delivered opinion. We're just exploring. We're just curious. What would it be like to feel this way or to think this thing? And it would be really awesome if that person was their parent that was able to hold that space for them and listen and not be really freaked out by what they hear their kids saying and giving them the opportunity to say some different things and feel it out and be curious about themselves. And so a journal is a really great place for this. It's really great if you let it be personal, where they only share it with you if they want to, but otherwise it's a tool where they can write things out. You might give them the option, or the idea I would do is to come up with like codes or little sketches or little symbols that are just for them to know, so that they don't feel like they're going to be busted for something. But it's so important for them to be able to get the words out of their mouth, out of their mind, onto paper, in order to make the best decision and be the best version of themselves, which is what you want to. So being a part of that process is going to require you to monitor your own anxiety and monitor your own fear and hold space for that belief that you have in them to be the best version of themselves and to come to these conclusions as they get older, figuring out how to think for themselves and think through their different opinions and their different understanding of what's going on in the world. So just a piece of encouragement that this would definitely come up if they're keeping a diary and you're reading it, where you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. And it's great to talk to them about it, but it's good if you have some ground rules ahead of time of if it's private or not and how we can talk about it. Maybe you can write back and forth. That's a great way to use a journal between a parent and a teen. So if you've enjoyed these ideas, I hope you'll like and subscribe. And if you'd like to work together, you can find my information below on the link. And I would love to talk to you. I hope you have a good rest of your day. Talk to you soon.